board meeting of Ebbsfleet Development Corporation. This is being recorded. That's why you're able to watch it, and will be released onto our website after the meeting. We have a member of the public here today, so just like to thank them for attending. James, do we have any apologies for absence?
So we've got apologies from Councillor Cummins. We are expecting Councillor Murphy to join virtually the meeting a bit late, and we are expecting Councillor Burden as well.
All right, great, thank you very much. Board, any declarations of interest other than the standard declaration related to members of the committee? No, so we'll call it standard declaration, nothing else. We then have a set of minutes for our board meeting on the 29th of January 2025 in front of us. Is everyone happy with those? Are those a true and fair record of the meeting? Agreed. Good. Thank you very much for that. Then any actions Ian you'd like to draw our attention to?
Yes, Chair will do. So action 0301, we're going to update the board on that situation in part 2, if that's okay.
Great.
And on 0207, Jen, you got any verbal update on that landowner responsibilities, or are we bringing that back in May?
I was going to bring it back in May, just having a sort of further discussion with the EA, just to make sure I'm getting it exactly correct.
And the only other open one is due to come in May, Simon. So
okay, great. And then we've got our forward look, our next board meeting on the 7th of May. All right, great. Thank you very much. That then brings us on to first piece of business of the day, your part 1 board paper.
thank you, Simon. Fairly brief this month. I think the only thing to note is the fact that we are still waiting for our budget confirmation for 25-26 from the ministry. I am giving approval to some contractual commitments, which low amounts that do spin into 25-26, but where we aren't doing that, we've got to some business has to continue.
Understood. Seems like a good time to name check Lucy Wilkins, who is here from the department. Lucy, great to have you with us, as always. All right, good on that. MIPIM, UK REIT?
Yeah, nothing really to add to what I've got there. We are going to be meeting next week, myself and Jen. We're being joined by Neil on Thursday morning. We're hosting a breakfast for a small number of investors and developers that are hoping to attract to the area and shown interest, and some partners working. So got a pretty full schedule of meetings with investors and developers, etc. during MIPIM, and brief is a little bit further out, but I've said there we're intending to attend. It's the 20th, 23rd of May. So we are planning for that at the moment, but it's still relatively to the shape of that take.
Right. Board, any questions on Ian's department paper? Anyone else? Nick, are you at MIPIM?
I'm not at MIPIM, no. I'll just say for the record that I'm at MIPIM anyway, so I'm not going out there at the expense of the taxpayer.
Right, okay. All right. Good to hear. Good to hear. All right. Okay. That, I think Ian's paper is noted. So Ian, thank you very much for that. We have a good session in MIPIM. Business session. Right. So let's move on to communications and marketing report.
Everyone, it's not been too long since we had the previous board, so there's not too much to update you on. I'll take the paper as read. Just a few highlights of work that has taken place this past month. We're continuing to work with Ebbsfleet Garden City Trust on planning for the communications launch of the 2 community buildings in Weldon. We have captured some great content so far, drone footage and image stills of the progress of the buildings. Hopefully for the next board paper, I will be able to pop some of them in for you to have a look. The ambition is very much that we will be providing updates to residents and community members as the works progress, but also put together an exciting time-lapse style video upon the launch, just to really showcase our involvement and the positive impact of the two community buildings. So we're working with the Trust on how we can utilise those assets and really just showcase these two exciting projects. So I'll keep you abreast with the footage as more comes along and the weather gets slightly better and less muddy. Included in the paper is an overview of the Magical Winter Festival that took place. Kevin's also covered it in his paper, but I've attached a link to a video that was put together by partners of the event, Cohesion Plus, along with some of the images that always go down really well, and I think showcases just how exciting and the great footfall of the event. As Ian touched upon, we're preparing for UK Reef and MIPIM, so we've been putting together some socials which have already gone out across our platforms, updating our marketing materials and supporting, as Ian said, those kind of communications with the events that are taking place whilst we're out there. We are also attending the Building New Communities Conference, which takes place on the 29th of April. So we have Simon Harrison, who's speaking on a panel for health, happiness and beautiful homes, which is really exciting. So we'll be doing some press coverage and marketing material to support that in the lead up to the conference. Lots of recruitment that has taken place as usual. Only other item that is worth mentioning, but I won't go into too much detail, is that you'll see in the press coverage for this month, there was extensive focus on jumping spiders and the SSSI. Unrelated, but I'm cognizant of the timing, we have a Telegraph journalist meeting early April to do a feature piece on Ebbsfleet, not related to the jumping spiders, but we'll be giving them a tour of and an overview of work to date. So they're coming early April. That's it. I'm happy to take any questions.
All right. Yes, board, Neil.
I'll just ask, I noticed on the Eurostar was that link on BBC News. I've had a look at the link. I noticed that that was very much the MPs in the Ashford area rather than the local MPs to this area. And I just wondered whether we are, as a development corporation, liaising with the Dartford and Gravesham MPs to push the case for trains to stop in Ebbsfleet.
So we have had requests and interests. There's certainly an ambition for all of the kind of Ashford work to be replicated in Ebbsfleet. There was an invitation for us to participate in a similar promo piece, but we didn't feel that it was the stance that they took for the piece for Ebbsfleet. We didn't feel was appropriate for us to necessarily speak on in that context. Of course, if there are opportunities for us to provide commentary or participate in a context that is appropriate for us to get involved in, then we absolutely will do. I know that Simon has spoken previously on radio about the benefit of Eurostar returning. So I think it's one of those scenarios in which I think it's really important to be mindful of the wider context. So we don't say yes to every opportunity, particularly around Eurostar, but just the ones that kind of align appropriately with us.
We're on it, but in the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was specific reason why we didn't participate in that particular program.
Thank you.
All right, Valerie.
Thank you. I ask about the website. I'm interested on two counts really. The first is that people do search for both Ebbsfleet Garden City and Ebbsfleet Development Corporation, which you'd expect, but we seem to be kind of moving away from both of those. I mean, we've now got Weldon Heart and Weldon, can't pronounce it, Weldon Wellbeing Centre. And I do think as a board we need to be careful about the use of Ebbsfleet, which does seem to resonate and should continue. it reminds me, it's probably not a very good analogy, but of the post office becoming consignia, within about a week or two. It went back to being the post office again, because it is absolutely does seem to have some resonance, is really what I'm saying. I think perhaps we should consider it again. But the other thing that I thought was slightly odd, really, is the relatively low numbers of views for planning and design, given, we've got major schemes going through, not least Ebbsfleet Central. I don't doubt that we do exactly what we're required to do in terms of, the statutory requirements for advertising and so on. But somehow maybe we should be doing more, because we're now getting a growing community who, for something like that, ought to be incredibly interested in it. It's going to be the new part of Ebbsfleet. So I don't know what we can do about that. And it's not really, it doesn't quite relate to a website, but it does relate, I think, to how we're marketing, promoting, just generally selling ourselves.
So
Can I reassure you about the use of Ebbsfleet? And
Yeah.
Ebbsfleet City. It's not at all the intention to reduce it down. The board have discussed as remember the difference between when we will use Ebbsfleet and we use Ebbsfleet Garden City, Ebbsfleet Period Place. But what Ebbsfleet Garden City, the project is made up of, is a number of neighbourhoods which have their own identity. So Castleville, Alcadon, Ashmere, Weldon. So those will be used to refer to the neighbourhoods when that's appropriate to do so. But they are all part of Ebbsfleet Garden City project. We use Ebbsfleet in the sort of higher order to describe those. But when it's about the neighbourhood, hence the Weldon heart, that situation in Weldon neighbourhood, that's the trust have chosen, which is right. So we don't believe there's no intention to reduce down the usage of Ebbsfleet.
And just on your point, with regards to the naming of the community buildings, they were determined by the community. As Ian said, there's no intention to dilute from a branding perspective, Ebbsfleet Garden City. But it is worth noting that those names were led by the trust, determined by the community, which I think speaks to that kind of strong identity that neighbourhoods have, as well as the identity of Ebbsfleet Garden City. Speaking to your question about the planning and design page, it's a really interesting one. The planning and design page on the Ebbsfleet Garden City website is the technical page for all of the kind of core planning and design documentation that practitioners and potentially members of the public may need. Any of those big news stories, particularly around Ebbsfleet Central, commercial facilities, etc., sit under our regeneration page. So whenever there's the kind of big good news stories, we'll see a spike on those pages, and we'll always see a spike on our own internal website news pages, which is the core place that we promote those good news stories, because that's the page that journalists, etc., will head to the most. So we keep an eye on the planning and design page just to make sure that it's performing as needed, but its purpose isn't to be the place that showcases the achievements of our projects. That's for regeneration and for news. And there's also a separate website designed for Ebbsfleet, which Simon and his team take care of, and that has even more technical information that practitioners will need to utilise, and that's separate from reporting. But just to reassure you that it's regen and news that has those big stories, signposting, that we'll see the spikes when we have news to share.
So when Ebbsfleet Central is advertised, is it under the planning administration? Is there a spike then on the regeneration and news pages?
Yes, so we have a holding, we have a page for Ebbsfleet Central anyway, which spikes in line with whenever there's kind of big announcements to do with Ebbsfleet Central, but it's always the news page that gets most traction and the news stories themselves.
So the community, I think, is engaged.
Yes, yeah. Planning and design is more of an operational part of the website.
All right. Okay, fine. Great. You have a question, Abed?
Yeah, just one about planning and design page. So in paragraph 3.1, you say that covers 19th January through to 19th of February.
Mhm.
But when I'm looking at the figures, it looks like this line graph clearly on a board paper. So and the values you use is similar. So I'm wondering, is this an up-to-date set of values? Or
Yes, so we have, just to make things even more complicated, we run our reporting on GA4 Google Analytics, which have like set programming that we can draw down from. The commentary that I will provide is always based on the dates that I provide in the board paper, but the graphs are slightly limited as to what you can capture, so I can't always respond to the alignment of the board cycle. So it's a good flag, thank you. Next time I'll be clearer as to which particular graphs have that flexibility in reporting. So yeah, thank you for that flag.
All right, good, well done, well done. Any other comments on this board paper, board? Otherwise, I think we are just noting this. Feels like it's duly noted, thank you very much. And design and delivery board. Caroline, thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon.
Mark.
So the usual update from me, relatively short this month. So in terms of development sites, the temporary school at Alcadon was approved. Board obviously visited the sites for the education campus recently, and we expect the temporary school to open in September. We've had some new pre-application discussions on the fourth phase of residential development at Ashmere and the final phase of the Bellway scheme at Harbour Village. So that's good to kick those conversations off. We're reporting a small number of completions this month, but that does get us over the 620 business plan target for the year. We will do an end of year count first week in April. And committee are meeting this evening to consider the third phase of Ashmere, which is a countryside clarion scheme for 216 homes. One thing that isn't included on the paper reported in the last board meeting around the cost decision in relation to the London Resort DCO. We have sent letters to LRCH at the registered address for LRCH and to the official receiver working on that. So we have had a response from the official receiver. So we have fed those numbers into the process.
Second class to save on
Well,
wasted money.
we need to be doing our bit. So I've done our bit. So yes, happy to take any questions, Simon.
All right, board, any questions there, Simon?
Yeah, Mark, just a few points. In terms of the allotments and community garden, Red Rose still being, slow in bringing those forward. Do we know? I know that there were drainage issues and things like that they were citing originally. So I'm just wondering if the block on that is current.
Yeah, one site was too wet and one site was too dry. So very cool. We did actually have an update from Red Row on Tuesday. They've given us some more information about ordering of particular sort of trees, benches, various things. So they have given us some information that the final work should be completed in April now. So.
Okay. I was interested to notice under Eastern Quarry section 73, they're now talking about specialist elderly accommodation. I know we've talked about that in a variety of contexts in terms of our own developments. So I'm just interested what sort of specialist elderly accommodation they're looking at.
Yeah, that's fine. So they've been looking at a couple of potential parcels, one in the middle of Alcadon, one in the middle of Ashmere. The current live discussions are with an extra care provider. The C2 use, if they have that approved, would allow for various different levels of care home or extra care or assisted living, various different things. But they are looking at an extra care block as their sort of first bit of that. We are having some live pre-application discussions on that.
Do we have similar facilities? I'm not aware we have similar facilities anywhere else in the Garden City, is that?
No. This would be the first bit coming forward. So we're very keen to support it. Very keen to be making sure that we are having proper design quality and conditions for residents. But the particular parcel of land in Alcadon is just near the Alcadon hub. It's in a good sustainable location. So we're relatively keen to get that coming through.
Okay, sounds good. And then finally, in terms of the Ebbsfleet Central and Section 106 is, are there any particular issues with the local authorities in terms of their responses, or is this just process of churning that through?
It is. It's probably fair to say it's slightly slower than I would have expected.
Right.
Doing everything we can to escalate and to be trying to assist where we can. See, Jen's team were involved in that as well as the LPA side. Yes, so we are doing what we can, but I think that there's just resourcing challenges with the authorities, which is then causing a slight slowing down. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Nick.
A few questions. Package living ERS,
Yes.
apartments or homes.
The scheme is a mixture of homes and apartments. The section that's package living will be houses, and then the other bit of the parcel is then affordable flats that will be taken by the moment. So packaged will be houses.
Thank you. Now, if we're sort of edging around 580, 600 completions a year, which is stunning. Where are we? Do we have a record on the sales rates as well? I mean, because 11 a week on any site is incredible.
Generally, we're not finding that there's very much, that not many stock units. Occasionally, we're getting reports that there are a handful in different locations, but then the house builders respond quickly to that, and then they'll then slow down completion. So generally, we take completions to be the same as occupations. People do continue to buy off plan. So there isn't a big difference in between sort of sales and completion.
So we are averaging 30% affordable, and there is certainly in London there's a total crisis because RPs aren't getting grants, so we don't have any registers. Last night I was at a cocktail party, a guy was explaining to me that he'd sent out on his 300 unit scheme, 100 of which were going to be 150 were going to be affordable, 30 RPs and only one expression of interest back, which is a burgeoning crisis. Because I saw that Berkeley Homes, their application in Southwark is to reduce their affordable or their 800 unit scheme from 277 units to 77.
Why is that, Nick? Is that 500?
It's viability. If it's in London, I'm sure there are going to be lots that are going to be over 6 stories. Hence, not only have your second stairs, you now also have your BS 991 second evacuation, second lift as well, which actually has to be as big as your original lift. And so there is this growing sense of crisis, and I don't think we're going to be immune. What I'm interested in is what your discussions are with housing associations, RPs that are here, to where they are on grant for the units that we're going to need to be funding this year.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say the narrative that you might have seen in the national press is probably the feedback that we get locally. There doesn't seem to be a lot of RPs taking new units at the moment. Most are quite active. They're working with Bellway on Harbour Village and on the packaged living site with Chartway. Areas where there are homes being built and there is 106 affordable that is coming through as houses. Generally, that seems to be quite easy to find sort of partners for, and they sort of take us to that. The apartment market is incredibly challenging, which is the feedback that we've been getting from Henley Camland in relation to the other higher density sections around the Alcredon Market Centre. So yeah, we have been trying to reach out, I think, proactively to the various RPs, but it's pretty fair to say not too many of them are sort of taking on too many new things at the moment. We've also been talking to the housing authorities, so Dartford Housing Team particularly, trying to understand organisations and products that they would find acceptable in the local area. But I agree that it is a challenge moving.
But Mark, just to come in, and then I'm bringing it in on this.
Yeah.
I know when I've been at BMO site, perhaps they had expressed concerns around shared ownership. But are we aware of this actually slowing down the pace of development, delivery of affordable?
I think it's fair to say that on the Alcadon Market Centre, if there had been a solution for someone to take those affordable apartments above the commercial floor space there, I think that then they would have brought those schemes forward by now. And because they haven't got that exit route for who's going to take the affordable, they then haven't then been building those blocks on other areas. It doesn't feel as though it's slowing things down.
Right.
The other developers have found solutions primarily because they've got that mix of houses and apartments.
This is largely as a consequence of the remediation and investment in existing housing stock of the RP sector, as opposed to investing in new housing stock. This is really the dynamic which is going on in the sector, isn't it?
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Nick, I don't think it's grant related, certainly not here, because the affordable homes in Ebbsfleet are pretty much all universally section 106 units, so very little grant. But it's well documented, isn't it, that crisis in the well, I'll describe it as a crisis, but the issues, challenges that RPs are facing with raising private finance because of that's well documented. And places, but as Mark has clarified, we're not seeing too much impact in this respect, that the inability of house builders to find a buyer for their affordable housing element is then delaying the delivery of private. Government is well aware that's been documented quite a lot. The issue about the market centre is probably a bit of that, but it's also the reluctance of the RPs to want to over above super friendly as well. So you put those two things together, they're struggling to come up with a solution. So
we are particularly prevalent to shared ownership.
Yes, the historic outline ownership freestone quarries. That's a big slice of shared ownership.
Yeah, shared ownership is a more difficult institutional investment tenure because of the staircasing elements compared with social housing. So it isn't as attractive to institutional investors because of staircasing. So that is a more troublesome. When I've been developers locally, they really express their concern about shared ownership. It is a point which was certainly raised with the housing minister. Yes, Valerie.
Yes, sorry. I wonder if there's something more that we could do, because it's a national issue. But I can't help wondering whether the RPs and indeed other investors aren't slightly behind the curve where we are. And I'm just recalling a conversation we had at the strategy day when we were looking at the extraordinary images. I mean, as Ebbsfleet is being built out, it is without question a very beautiful place. And much more so than average development, and the sort of principles have been moved to the attention to detail is really, really beginning to shine through in the various developments. But in addition, we were just recently looking at the major secondary school on site. We've got 2 community centres that are coming on stream. And certainly for RPs, and indeed wider, people are always complaining that the social infrastructure lags behind. It's indeed on the register as an issue to watch. But actually, it is coming alive. And if we're competing for that investment, which we must be, maybe there's more that we could do to literally target, shared ownership investors and indeed RPs to say, well, if you're going to spend money, spend it in Ebbsfleet because, I don't know, antisocial behaviour might be, because we've got these community centres coming on stream and the like. I mean, I can't invent the marketing strategy here and now, but I do think we've got a good story to tell.
I think we are benefiting from that, because I think see in lots of other parts of the country where they really are struggling, and our numbers are not being affected by that at the moment, as you can see. So I suspect we may well benefit from whether it's that effect, but I don't think we're being as impacted here as many other places.
No, that may be right, but RPs essentially lose money by buying Section 106s. They have to fund them through debt. That trashes their ratios. The subsidies aren't enough. And there's an existential crisis here, which we can at the margins manage through the best live.
Yeah.
I wouldn't underestimate the impact of this.
We have hosted the board of West Kent Housing previously. They've been doing some work with Red Road down at Stonehaven Park. They want a bit of a tour of their different sites. I've had Moats Housing in before, and obviously we do have regular liaison with Clarion through the work at Ashby. So there are various different touch points, and we can have a look at whether there's any other sort of touch points to try to focus on.
Yeah, I try and identify through our local house builders where they may be having issues. Yeah. And then, particularly where you've got RPs who are active in the area, then perhaps, to Valerie's point, could just have a update and if we could just try and encourage them to, to be.
Respect us almost.
Yeah.
Well, if there are RPs who are active in the sector, you would think that they're wanting to preserve their market share and their activity in a particular area. So those sorts of people, I think Moat is one you're talking about. I don't know what their appetite is here locally. I would imagine it's still reasonably strong. They've got their own development pipeline themselves. 2,000 units, I think. So, yeah, but encourage them if they're going to spend, whatever dollars they've got left, to look at Ebbsfleet as opposed to somewhere else.
But I'll make one. Sorry.
Yes, go on.
I'll make one more point. If we keep pumping out 1-bedroom flats for RPs when what they want is 3 and 4 bedroom houses, we're not going to get the appetite.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just so.
Well, I'm not sure that's. I would take a different type of view. I think that they quite like 1 and 2 bedroom.
They don't. They really don't.
Well, the local authority list is all for 3 beds and 4 beds, and because the RPs get so much less money for 3 beds, they don't really want it. Plus, and so but I think that the issue is actually how much money they're going to be able to charge as rent. So, your social rent, shared ownership, Mark. Whereas in London, we have either social rent. You lose £100 a foot, if not £150 a foot in terms of building. So I've got blocks at Wembley, and I'm losing 10 million quid a building on a 40-unit block. It's that bad. At London affordable rents. It's the point about whether we actually have something with Dartford and Gratian where they would actually have a different level of rent rather than just social rent. At London living rents, with up to sort of losing 5 million quid a block.
Yep.
And because there's literally 70 to 80 could charge more. But I think what we got, in a way, we got 2 wrong ends. We got shared ownership, got social rent.
I don't think we do have any social. We have a lot of affordable rent. It's affordable rent.
But I'm going to try and move this on because I don't believe the sky is falling in here on this issue. So we should dimension how big an issue it is. Clearly, the extent to which it's sticky here, we should try and do something to unstick it. But it's not stuck here like it is in other places in the country. But let's do some investigation. Perhaps, Mark, if you could come back with any specific cases the next board meeting, then we can discuss an action plan. But I just want to finish off. I think Neil wanted to come in and Valerie.
No, I did.
Different,
okay.
Different point. I know you want to conclude on that. But if you look at the dashboard for this period, January to March 2025, we're only at the beginning of March. We may not have all the figures for February. I don't know. When you look at it, the 9 actual completions looks quite low, despite the fact that we've done very well this year in terms of delivery. And from recollection, part of the reason for the higher green bar in October to December was completion of blocks of going back to flats, because you get them all in at the same time. So the question was, should we be concerned about that 9. And another question, which is, are we now getting more houses coming forward than flats at the earlier stage? That's looking at completions, but earlier. Is there a move?
I mean, I wouldn't be worried about the 9 for this quarter. Obviously, there were other quarters where there was a lot of over delivery. It's obviously more than the forecasting. However difficult overall annual forecasting is for the houses, to split that into quarterly forecasting is incredibly difficult. So in a way, the blue areas are our best assumption at the beginning of the year. We are expecting a small number of further completions before the end of March. That count would have literally just covered the period of January, I think. Yes, I'm sure it did, based upon when the papers had to be done by. So we'll have some February numbers out, some March numbers, but I don't think we're probably going to end up. I think we'll probably end up in around the 640, 650 category overall. I think the point about what's being completed now is a really valid one, because actually an awful lot of schemes are now completing homes rather than necessarily flats. There's some big flats still to complete down at Cable Wharf. One of those we are possibly doing, the one for the year after. A lot of the Harbour Village sections are homes. Alcadon 5B, South, Ashmere, a lot of those parcels have combinations of apartments and houses, but there's a lot of houses rather than the big chunky bits of apartments that we have previously seen through Ebbsfleet Green and through Keepmoat.
And including affordable homes as houses.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Like Cliff generally.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Obviously, as you know, we do try to make sure that the affordable ratio or the split of houses and apartments and the number of bedrooms is then reflective of the market section as well.
All right, Ian, I'm going to bring you in finally.
One of the big drivers of the housing completions throughout the year, appreciate Neil, is when the house builders have their end of financial year. That tends to be one of the biggest drivers. You see a massive peak when they're approaching their end of the year, and I know a number of them are June and December, so they don't know how many of them, but they don't line up to end of March. Many of them are December, June.
All right, good point, Ian. All right, everyone. I think we've had a good discussion about that, deep dive on the RP sector. That paper is for noting, so I'm assuming it's duly noted. Kevin, Ebbsfleet Living.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'll take the paper as read, but just pull out a couple of updates since the paper was written and a couple of highlights. That's okay. First of all, in terms of updates, I did mention in the paper that the community board were doing a recruitment drive. We can confirm that following that recruitment drive, they've now appointed 9 new members to the community board. And they have representation from all 8 neighbourhoods on the community board, which was the objective of the process. And we're really happy that they've done that. And really just to commend the community board, because this was all community board led, resident led members and resident led recruitment. So good step forward for them.
Good news.
And the second one, just to highlight the community fund again, which I've mentioned, just to say that this is the final opportunity for people to apply for community fund in a 2-year program that we approved. We have had 18 applications for this current opening, which is by far the most we've ever had, almost double what we've had in any previous round of bidding. So a really great reflection on the Garden City Trust and the community fund and how it's being spread around. So next week we'll be deciding how many of those 18 actually get funding, but a really good reflection on that fund. And the final thing, just to update from my paper, is that I've mentioned in the paper the Ebbsfleet Salvation Army, who were trying to get the funding for the mobile community space. You remember, board has previously approved 25% funding for that. I can now confirm that they've secured all the funding and the vehicle will be ordered from this month. So those 198,000, you recall, was the total cost of the vehicle. We allocated 49,000 to them, and they found the other 150 themselves. So that's a good.
Does it have a wrap on it with the Salvation Army and Ebbsfleet logos? What does it have on it?
it's now going into the design phase. So
Right.
basically, once they secure the funding, then it's going into the design phase. It'll not just be for the Ebbsfleet area, it'll be for the Ebbsfleet area plus the neighbourhoods. But yeah, well, it'd be up to them to sort of design it themselves, but I'm sure it'll be sort of jointly branded with
All right,
us.
so we'll have,
Yeah.
wrap on it.
But it's going to go into the design stage.
Doesn't be too corporate in it, but
No, it's a much more.
you're doing some good. It's good that people know you're doing some good. I would say just be quiet about it.
Exactly. And then just sort of pulling out a couple of highlights of the paper this month. Caroline mentioned the Winter Lights Festival. Just in addition to what Caroline's already said on that, this is probably the largest attendance that we've ever had an event. So we probably went over the 3,000 attendance at that event, bearing in mind it was a very cold February evening. That was quite commendable. And also to say that in doing that, Cohesion Plus, who are a local fantastic arts organisation, delivered it with us, but they engaged with 4 of the local schools to develop some of the arts installations. 3 of them outside the urban development area, so a real good collaboration between new and existing communities. And I think the high attendance was in part reflecting that fact that we did break down the barriers between new and existing communities in terms of that attendance. There is a film link both in Caroline's paper and mine to that event if you get a chance to have a look at it. And then finally, just to sort of pull out the annual North Kent Apprenticeship event, which is something that the Development Corporation kicked off 4 years ago. The event this year was held in St John's School in Gravesend. We alternated between Dartford and Gravesham each year. Just below 700 visitors went to the apprenticeship event this year. 39 employers, a lot of them working with us and working in the Ebbsfleet area. So really going from strength to strength, that particular initiative. But happy to take questions and anything else in the paper.
Okay, thank you very much. Board, any questions, any observations? You have wowed us with that work. Well done, as always. That paper is for noting. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Mary, our Resident Satisfaction Survey 2024, an outcome framework. Excited about this one. I'm excited about all of it, but it's very good data in here.
Thank you. So I'm aware that you've already reviewed a lot of this data at the board strategy day, and saw the flyer that we produced for the marketing suites, which hopefully is going some way as well to sell the home so quickly. You've also seen the digital summary and the very snappy video that was produced at the highlight. So just as a summary, obviously it's a very good level of response, which in itself is positive to show that people are interested in taking to heart, but also gives us real confidence in the reliability and the robustness of the data that's coming out of it. It's very positive that we've met our KPI targets, demonstrating such a strong sense of community, sense of belonging to the place. Also, the very high level of attendance at events, 50% is really quite impressive. As I mentioned, we have confidence now in that richness of the data, but also adding in this year some of the demographic questions that we responded to the public sector equalities duty audit with, which I think is giving us now a level of data that is actually not held in a lot of new development areas, and that's being picked up by a number of our partners now asking us how we've collected that data and how we're going to use it. So just to note there on the levels of diversity in Ebbsfleet that we've picked up in the satisfaction survey. 19% of our residents are from all the Asian groups, so which is significantly higher than Dartford and Gravesham populations. 10% of our population are Hindu as well. So that's level of data that we're getting around demographics starts to shape how we, particularly in placemaking, deliver our events, and the voices that are more perhaps seldom heard that we perhaps need to take more note of. For us, it's reinforcing the areas of our focus, the need for infrastructure, particularly around health facilities, as always, that we're aware of, but also sports and physical activity, leisure facilities, and the need for parks and open spaces. What's coming through as well as around physical connectivity, whether that's transport or pathways, cycle routes. And also what we've picked up through the survey is the lower level of volunteering, which we've noted before is likely due to the demographic of a young population, most people working full time. Happy to take any comments, questions on the resident satisfaction survey.
Thank you. I think particularly the penultimate page, national context, that's got some very good summary data on it. 84% of residents said they are satisfied with their local area as a place to live, against a national 74%. So there are a number of very strong, I think, positive affirmation through this resident survey. And then you can, there are the areas where we know community infrastructure, transport, that are areas where things are happening. So I think there'll be an uptick in responses. When are we doing the next survey?
It will be autumn this year.
Autumn this year, right? By that time, fast track will have started, won't it?
Well, indeed, yeah.
And probably,
Temporary site open.
yeah, secondary school,
Community facility.
community facilities. Should probably make sure that we do necessary kind of promotion of that, so people know they're not in the immediate vicinity. Progress on that. I don't know. Do we have time lapse camera, that kind of thing? And that worked pretty well as things build.
For the community building,
Yeah.
yes. So I'll start to include them in my book.
Okay. And on our website, do we have? So time lapse. All right, board.
Yeah, just building on that, because when I was reading, I was thinking, when you do a staff engagement survey, you often then do a sort of you said we did at the time in response to the issues raised. So I think it's quite helpful in terms of what you're saying there, Simon. It says when you do the next survey in the autumn, we've got that sort of you said we did, or you said these improvements that have been made type analysis that we can feed back to people and make it very stark to the sort of, this is what you said last year, this is the difference that has happened over the last 12 months.
I think you make a very good point there, particularly as we know that we're like leaning into these issues, so we will be able to lead off with saying that you said transportation fast track, you said community facilities to, sort of secondary school, so I think we've got a very strong story. So perhaps if we could lead off with that somehow with what we're sending out to people, that would really help to get an uptick. And also, I'm sure it would feed through to, the metric around being listened to and heard in the community. So, all right, good point, Simon. Board, any other comments on this?
It's really good.
Yeah, it is. Are we going to be putting out any kind of motion of this? Resident survey?
Yeah, of course. So the process is that we bring it to you in this formal process, and then tomorrow we'll start our promotion of it. So we've got our digital newsletter, everything's going up on our website, social, so that people know our findings.
Good. Well, can't ask for anything more than tomorrow. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you, Caroline. All right. Brilliant. Not soon enough. Fantastic. Great job. All right, everyone. So that is good news. Well done on all the hard work. Thank you. That is for noting. Noted with a happy heart. All right, we've got a decision here. Ebbsfleet annual decarbonisation report and environmental programme 2025-26. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. It is a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? But it is split into two parts. So perhaps if we take those two parts separately. So the first part is around it's a summary of progress on the Environmental Sustainability Action Plan for 2024 to 25, and setting out the forward plan of works, forward projects for next year. So yeah, as you note, we are looking for approval from board of our DEL funding of £154,000, subject to approval of next year's budgets, of course. So taking the paper as a read, I'll invite questions on that particular part of the paper.
Board, any questions?
The only question I had was around a lot of organisations I'm working with now are moved to sort of science-based targets in terms of their approach to decarbonisation. Now, I'm just wondering whether there's any relevance or appropriateness around, are you for science-based targets in terms of trajectories that we're looking at, Simon, in terms of board looking at, particularly as we think about the sort of work plan for 25-26.
Yeah, we've been having conversation, particularly actually with Park Royal Common and the work they've done, and they've been sharing some of that work with us on their science-based targets methodology. the approach we've taken today has been based on the model, the carbon model, if you remember, that we've developed, which is itself based on standard methodologies that you may that sit within that science-based approach. In terms of actually setting out the targets, we developed through that model a pathway, if you remember, which set out a number of actions across the 4 areas: buildings, waste, carbon sequestration, and travel. And so we're basically, our approach has been to therefore identify metrics at an Ebbsfleet level that we can then map our progress against that decarbonisation target. So it's a more localised approach, and the targets are specific to Ebbsfleet, derived from that model rather than from national science-based targets. I think we can continue, the intention, I think, was we would continue to kind of monitor that approach against the emerging practices. Everybody's kind of learning in this space at the moment, and different people at different organisations are taking slightly different approaches. So we're continuing to meet on an 8-weekly basis with other major projects across London and the South East to share the approaches we're developing, and we'll probably use that forum, I think, going forwards to make sure we're aligned. But at the moment, I think that the approach we've taken today seems to be generally aligned, albeit it's much more localised based on our own model.
Okay, and so that group, because I did notice that around this major projects group that we're part of. So what sort of organisations are part of that group then?
So you've got most of the major developments. So people like Meridian Water, Old Oak Common. Yeah. It's an interesting group because it's made up actually of both public sector-led developments, but also some of the key consultants that are working on those developments. So it's quite an unusual group. You've got both the public and the private sector sharing knowledge, best practice, and approaches. So yeah, I mean, I can provide you with a.
No, I was just interested in the type of mix of organisations, but it seems like there's some good opportunities for learning for our particular context from that wider group. And I think the final question I had around this was, if we look at the table in 3.2, where the focus areas for next year are, I'm not sure I fully understood the second item under energy, which is the energy innovation demonstrator around the microgrid.
Yeah.
Can you just talk a bit more about what that actually involves?
Yeah, sure. So when we originally developed the Sustainability Action Plan, we had a whole set of actions around energy innovation demonstrators, but that goes back 4 or 5 years. And since then, regulation has actually caught up in many ways. And so a lot of those actions actually were surpassed by the performance that we're now modelling, certainly from 2025 onwards with the future homes, future building standards kicking in. But one area, when we look back at the decarbonisation pathway for Ebbsfleet that we felt offered an opportunity to look at innovation, and was around retrofitting. So the board, very clear that we wouldn't use our funds to necessarily retrofit private individual homes. But one of the areas when we looked at opportunities around retrofitting, one of the areas, we've got a number of apartment blocks running along the fast track boulevard within Castle Hill, all owned by the same housing association that were built about 10 years ago now, none of which actually have PV on. And so we've been talking with a couple of providers, microgrid providers, around that as a potential project, a retrofitting project, and the housing association as well. So this is about kind of all working as a facilitator to bring the HA and that microgrid provider together and explore a project for retrofitting PV on those routes as a microgrid along the whole of the fast track boulevard in that section.
Okay, so that'd be a sort of community energy company.
That's one methodology.
I'm not familiar with those in my locales. Okay, thank you.
We may not need any money. I mean, we're hoping we may not need any funding for that particular project. We just act as a facilitator, but there's some budget in there in case we need some technical support to make the business case to those two parties.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a decision here in front of us. Approve rental of 154, deliver the environmental programme 25-26. Is board happy with that?
Yes. What's the status of that approval?
We're being asked to grant it now.
So have a pre-budget outside.
It'd be subject to the confirmation of our budget allocation. But I think you can approve it subject to that. I think the paper makes it.
I'm happy to do that. I just wanted clarity.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely, without that, we wouldn't go for it, spend it.
That needs to be resolved by 1st of April, does it?
Well, hopefully.
Yeah.
2021.
Just tee that one up. Put Lucy on the spot at all. All right. Okay, great. So we have this in front of us. Everyone have to approve that?
Brilliant.
Yeah, great. Okay.
I will say, we sort of put this in, if our spending review were to come back lower, we'd have to come back to you and say.
Yeah. We'd have to prioritise.
We're going to spend some.
That's just what I was trying to tease out.
Yeah. All right. Simon, do you also?
It's not ring fenced and preserved.
We have the annual decarbonisation report, don't we?
We do indeed. So when we published our decarbonisation plan back in September 2023, we set out that we would publish an annual report monitoring against that. And the first report was due end of March 2025. So this is our first annual decarbonisation report. So using the original work, the original model, we've then looked over the last 12 months at trying to identify relevant data sets that are specific to the Ebbsfleet area across those 4 areas that I mentioned previously: buildings, travel, waste, and carbon sequestration. We've been able to identify relevant data sets across buildings and developed our own data sets for travel. Carbon sequestration is effectively calculated through green space and the types of green space. The one area that we haven't identified data set for is the waste area. We rely upon local authority wide data sets for that. So this report effectively summarises real world data within the area against those 4 areas and provides an update on progress today. We've provided quite a bit of detail as it's the first report to set out the methodology that we're intending to use, and then in subsequent reports in future years, we will just report on the monitoring rather than on the methodology.
All right. Board, any comments on that?
Got a target of net zero by 2030. We achieve it.
We've got EDC organisational target to be in carbon zero by 2030. You're right, and then we've got the citywide, which is to be net zero carbon by the time of completion of the Garden City, which we substantiate as being 90% reduction based on local carbon emissions in the Dartford and Gresham area 2020. That's another mouthful, isn't it? That's the baseline. So they are around, memory, 3.3 tonnes per person in the Dartford and Gresham area in 2020, and we're looking to get down to 0.3 tonnes per person. And you're probably going to ask me, are we on track? So what I can say is, in terms of the data sets that we do have, the buildings, yes, we are, and we've actually delivered slightly more PV than we were expecting at this point. So that's helpful. We were able to undertake our first audit of PV installations this year. So we have an accurate understanding of the exact square meterage of PV across the Garden City. So the buildings were generally on track. The travel there, we're slightly behind in terms of, and that's derived actually from modal share. So modal share is the key metric. Although I would note from our analysis as well that we actually have 3 times as many EV vehicles as the Kent average. So that's a positive in terms of EV ownership. And then in terms of carbon sequestration, we're on track as well. And waste, we don't have the data to really interrogate that fully.
Right. Yes,
Just
Simon.
one question. You talked about PVs. In terms of air source heat pumps, clearly the information only has 3 that we've seen through planning. Is there any way of auditing more broadly in terms of post-installation, post-completion installation of air source heat pumps and understanding what's happening in that space?
Yeah, you're right. There is a missing data set there in terms of retrofitting of air source heat pumps. We don't currently have a data set on that, largely because there isn't necessarily a need for planning permission, for example, to retrofit it. So we're not aware at this point of any other data sets we could use at this point for installation. Not necessarily.
So short of peering over people's fences.
Which, you know, has been known to happen on occasion by the planning enforcement officer.
We should do that to get the house.
I would have to say on it that actually at the moment, retrofitting is more likely of air conditioning units at the moment from our own from our own views or peering over fences than of air source heat pumps at this point. Which flags another issue around overheating and the design of the homes as well, which is something that we're looking at through planning and through the sustainability guidance that we developed this year as well.
Just to ask, on the new developments, you say new developments granted planning permission since September 23 have been designed to be free. A lot of our planning permission is being granted ages ago because of the outline planning. But is that, when you say granted planning permission, is that planning permission or reserve matters?
Yes, sorry, reserve.
So we have got some control over it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise, we're done for because the outline.
Yeah, so the last dwelling with a gas boiler is expected to go in, to be installed in 2028. But that's probably a little misleading because it's one scheme. It's the Red Rose scheme in Alcadon that has it's a large phase and therefore it's got a long build-out period. Most of our schemes that are still installing gas boilers should actually be completed within the next 12 months. So other than the Red Rose site, most other sites should be moved across to electric only heating.
Right. It's sort of quite conservative expectations around completion as well. So yeah, that easily could come.
All right.
Yes, Nick.
So I like your green map. That's a great tool. Do we, and it's a question for Mark as much as we are a garden city, what influence can we bring through planning still on imposing more trees? Put into context, in Stonebridge, we're putting in 350 on 7 acres.
Simon's doing character traits. Do you want to explain that, Simon? That's how you do that.
Could do better.
Well,
We planted that one afternoon, didn't we? The other week.
We did, we planted.
Just whips.
220.
So
Even better than 3 walls.
I think we are still the only local authority that sets out a minimum number of street trees per 15-metre length of street typologies, and we then literally count those in every planning application, and then deliver against that. Not only that, we then go out and count them once they're installed. So we do a post-completion inspection with a landscape architect. So we're fortunate to have a landscape architect in the team who's able to do that. And then within our annual programme of projects, we do have a planting project. So this year, literally in the last 4 weeks, we have planted over 500 whips across 2 sites. One of those days was actually with the local primary school, which was fantastic. Got the whole school out planting the whips, and then the second day was actually a volunteer day. We had a number of members of the local community over in Springhead Park join us to plant those whips. So there's a budget for next year as well to continue that planting program.
So this is a very good answer. And what is our sort of 10-year scenario for additional trees? And the metric you want to choose?
Yeah, we did do some work on this actually this year, and we worked out that as a bare minimum, we're typically delivering at least 1 tree per dwelling each year, either through the planning applications. And then on top of that, you've got the planting program that I just talked about that will be over and above that. So, yeah, I mean, we were looking at whether we could do it a realistic target of around 1,000 trees per annum as a realistic target, but we haven't actually set that within our core corporate targets. That's more an informal target for the environmental program itself.
Thank you. Great answer.
We've also got the sustainability assessment guide, which to the planning committee in some detail. I mean, it certainly exceeds local plans, other social rights non-statutory, but it's another tool benchmarking the overall sustainability of individual applications. I guess we should measure that over and above, like, just a baseline. It's a very new thing. Last year.
I think the other point I would also note, Nick, is it's not only just the number, but it's actually the maturity of the trees. So actually our public land strategy sets out a maturity level over and above what the bare minimum would be within a typical planning application. So we are getting more mature trees installed at planning application stage as well, which is hugely significant, giving them the best chance to survive.
Thank you.
All right. So the annual decarbonisation report is just for noting, isn't it?
It's just for noting.
Yep. Right. Is that duly noted, board? Agreed. Yep. Excellent. All right. Thank you very much for the hard work there, Simon. Fantastic. Paul, Jen, development infrastructure enabling works.
Jen, thank you. I think you meant to work first last time, so I'll go first.
I always mention both of your names, otherwise I get told off.
Thanks, Simon. Good afternoon, everyone. Just a few key updates from the infrastructure enabling part of the report, which I'll take as read. So our contractor has now completed the minor road surface repairs along Ebbsfleet Gateway. There's one section of handrail that is still outstanding. That's due to be delivered next Monday. They are very busy working on the minor principal inspection items this week. So we are hoping to get KCC down within the next 10 days to actually sign off those works. And thanks to KCC for visiting site and agreeing the scope of works with us for those items. So it'd be great to get those concluded. In terms of North Fleet wastewater treatment works, Southern Water, we had a meeting with them last Friday. They are conducting a 4-day workshop this week with their contractor and their design team to look at option B proposals and various options for the extra odour control that we are requiring in advance of this remobilisation in April. It's a new grant agreement has been put into place. It says in the report that they have trialled an infiltration improvement scheme around the Northfleet area, which they've had some limited success with. That's an initiative to reduce the amount of groundwater infiltration into the water system. So that's an initiative that they are trialling out across the area, in particular in Northfleet. So to report on that, that has to some extent reduced the urgency, the capacity upgrade works, but it is still going to be within this next first half of this next AMP period, which is good news for this area. Just on Fast Track Bean Tunnel, just to note that we understand that KCC are still trying to resolve their biodiversity net gain requirements. They were hoping to have those concluded early this month. That's now looking like to be the end of this month, and we're still awaiting KCC feedback on the consolidated legal agreements that were sent over early December. So any questions on that paper?
Thank you very much for that. That's great. Any questions, board?
Can we just cover my items quickly? Is that
Yes, go on.
Yeah, there's just a couple of
questions.
Be simpler. Yeah, just a couple of bits to flag really. Just at section 5 on Ebbsfleet Green, note the continued good progress and additional images here. Obviously, as Caroline mentioned, we're going to have our own better footage from next month, so hopefully be able to give you an even better picture of progress. But we're now out of the ground neighbourhood house, which is great. And just back to section 3 on Ebbsfleet Central. Just to note at 3.3 at the point of writing, we were still working on the outline business case and the progress through MHCLG, and I'm delighted to say that subsequently, following a meeting last week, that outline business case has now been approved, and we've received formal notification of that as well, which is great. And I'll talk more in part 2 about what happens next. But
that's great.
Great news.
Good. All right. Board, any comments, observations on that? No, that is for noting. Just before we wrap up, I hoped that he was going to be able to join us, but Derek Murphy, our representative from Kent County Council, may still join for part 2. This is his last meeting. Our Kent County Council elections are on or after our next board meeting, and Derek won't be running again. There's no Devo deal going on to Kent, so they have got elections in May. So he will cease to be a Kent County Councillor. So this is effectively his last board meeting. So I would like to, and I've cleared this with him, I'd like to just place on the record our thanks to Derek for his support and hard work as a representative of Kent County Council. And we look forward in due course to finding out who our new representative will be. Derek will go until their elections, I'm sure, still be our representative, but this is effectively his last board meeting. So Derek, you're not here, but thank you very much. We'll be accordingly. Okay, great. So I think we have a few questions from members of the public. We will be publishing on our website sponsors' answers to those. So I think that then concludes today's part one business. Thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.